Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to David's Den. I am David and I make videos about Stephen King, his novels, his short stories, and any adaptations that were made for film or television. Today we are moving along in the Night Shift movie vlog series, and we're moving on to The Man Who Loved Flowers. We're back to short films now that were made either unofficially or as part of the Dollar Baby Shorts program. The Man Who Loved Flowers is a short story by Stephen King that first appeared in a 1977 issue of Gallery magazine and then was collected a year later in the 1978 omnibus Night Shift. It's about a man walking up 3rd Avenue on the Upper East Side of New York City. I think it's between 63rd and 73rd Streets. Everybody that sees him going by can tell that he's in love and how wonderful it is to be in love in spring. And the news on the radio, though, is talking about getting involved in Vietnam. There's a great line. I have it pulled up. Let me get to it. The radio poured out bad news that no one listened to. A hammer murderer was still on the loose. JFK had declared that the situation in a little Asian country called Vietnam, the guy reading the news called it, would bear watching. I love that people don't even know how to pronounce the country. So this is setting the time for us, which is, of course, 14 years before the story was written, or at least before it was initially published. Who knows when it was actually written? Stephen King probably does. And now let's go ahead and say spoilers for all things short story Man Who Loved Flowers and all things for this short film, because we will be discussing how it lines up as an adaptation. I might be talking about foreshadowing, and I'm about to give away the end. So spoilers for all of that. Our protagonist ends up kind of down an alleyway off of 73rd Street, I think it is. He has these flowers that he's bought from this wonderful vendor, and he's thinking about Norma, and he can't wait to see Norma. And oh, there she is out of the courtyard. And oh, wait, that's not Norma. And he pulls the hammer out of his pocket, and he smashes her upside the head. It's this really great romantic story until he realizes that's not Norma. Norma's been dead a long time. They're never Norma. I have to stop the scream. Bam! And then he just puts the hammer back in his pocket and walks on, thinking about how much in love he is and how much he can't wait to see Norma. And that's the end of the short story. So there's a short film, a little under 10 minutes long, that was done in 2010. It was written and directed by Christopher Harrison and stars Steve Byers, Steve Byers as the man who loved flowers. And I guess here we go. Great music to start this. Immediately sets time period for us. So I love that they have this police officer. They're setting it up, helping these kids go by, because there's a great line about him crossing the street, and he's just so in love and enamored with love that he doesn't know where he is. The police officers halted traffic for him as he crossed a street because he recognized the look in the young man's face of love, because he was engaged himself, the police officer was, and had often seen that look in the shaving mirror in the morning. I love that touch. It's just such a romantic story. And here we get the police officer directing traffic right at the beginning. Wait, did they just cross the street and then go back down the same direction on the other side? Well, I guess it's safe to cross at the corner. Yeah, here it is, the police officer letting him cross. Except it happens later. Young man. So passing the flower cart and this guy calling to him, young man, is what happens to an extent. He's supposed to pass a woman on the street who, an old lady carrying groceries in a baby pram who waves to him, and he waves back, and we have her internal thoughts. Then we get this dour-faced florist, but as he passes, we're hearing the radio about the hammer murderer and JFK and Vietnam and all these things that set tone for us and setting that says, well, all these terrible things are happening in the world. It doesn't matter because this guy's in love and that's all he cares about. And he turns on his own to think maybe Norma would like flowers. And that's when the florist comes in. I don't mind that they have it being turned around for the florist to call him if, and I'm hoping what's about to happen, is he says, I can tell you're in love. Right? Because then it gives us a really quick way into all of the internal thoughts we've had from the guys watching him, from the woman with the baby pram. And those old guys that are watching are supposed to say, hey, you want my wedding ring? I don't want it anymore. Sell it to you cheap. An old friend of mine. Oh, I love the touch of the crow, the omen of death. That's not in the story. This is interesting. And now, if you hear, we're getting the radio to something about sending troops. So I guess even though they updated it, they did give us this element. I do wish that it was separated, that we heard it as he was walking, because that's what sets the tone of we're in a real serious time, but this guy doesn't care right now. And that's the beauty of the story to me.
Hey, buddy! Hey, buddy!
Wedding ring.
Yeah, you! You want to buy a wedding ring real cheap? I'll sell you mine. I don't want it anymore. Come on, come on.
So it feels like the music is setting us in the past, but I think this was contemporary to 2011, right? Because look at the clothing. So this is just like the short story, but he's in an alley near trash cans, and things feel a little off when he hears the yowl of a tomcat in heat. He's like, that's not a pretty sound. And then he sees Norma coming out of the courtyard. That threw me in the short story when it said she was coming through the courtyard, I guess, of a building that's nearby, the building that these trash cans are to, the alley next to it. She does smile back at him. He says, Norma, I think you have the wrong person.
It was always
I like the surprise of it. I think that's done very well. I don't like this screaming that happens afterwards, because the whole point is that he hits her, he swings the hammer when she opens her mouth to scream, because he wants to stop the scream. He doesn't want to kill her. He wants to stop the scream. Byproduct is that he kills her. So I don't like that these screams just came shrieking in right after, but it kind of echoes back to the crow moment we had, which was odd and not from the short story, that threw him off a little bit. How come you never look at me like that anymore?
How come you don't look at me like that anymore? Oh, never mind.
And that is the end of the short story. The couple sees him walking by. She says that to her husband while they're sitting on the front door stoop, because it's New York City, so they're on door stoops, not in their yards. So I don't really mind the change that it's more of a suburban setting rather than New York City. I don't think that matters at all. We kept it in kind of a downtown area with the people hanging out and all the shops, I think. I like that they threw in the radio about the hammer killer at the end as he was walking by, and there was a dichotomy of there's this man in love while we're hearing it, and the couple notices him being in love. Why don't you look at me like that anymore? But I think it takes something away of this from the setup in the short story, that it goes by so quickly, and I read it earlier, the radio's on and there's a hammer killer and JFK and this and that and this and that you only catch it if you go back and read it again. Really? Or you kind of go, huh, hammer killer, oh well, I guess we're moving on to Vietnam. That's funny. You don't think about the mention of the hammer killer until this guy pulls the hammer out of his pocket. Okay, so let's break this down. As a short film on its own, ignoring the source material, I actually think this is great. I love the setup. I love the music. The use of the music was really creative to give us this, oh, we're nice and romantic feeling, and this old-timey, everything is good, life is great and positive, down, 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 da ba da ba da da, right? And we got this bustling town, and everyone is happy, and here comes the man in love. I think that all of that was set up really well. I think Steve Byers as the man who loved flowers did a great job, especially when we got just a hint of that, huh? What is that? With the crow and kind of the insight into his brain, like, what's a group of crows called? A murder. Huh? What? Murder? I'm odd and awkward. Nope, now I'm back with you. We don't get that glitch in the short story until the end with Norma. As a short film, I wish that we had gotten the setup of the hammer murderer earlier, just so it would justify the ending, that it didn't come out of nowhere. And I understand, that was a big bump sound if the mic picked that up. I understand and root for the shock value that this guy who seems so gentle and nice and mild-mannered is the killer. But I think having that on the radio and then going to one of these pieces of music or talking about the troops or, you know, just like it was in the short story, gives us this sense of impending doom that we don't even realize we're starting to feel. And that's what I think was missing when I'm mixing up adaptation correlation here. But that's what I think was missing in tone when it comes to the adaptation. And I wish from a craft standpoint, they had at least set up a little bit that something was not quite right with this guy. And they did with the crow montage. So I guess I'll give them that. I was expecting the short story. So, okay, let me forget that. I did think the ending was a little forced with the hammer. I think he did a great job. I think the idea of the pulling it out wasn't as smooth as I would have liked. And hitting her, the effect was a little off-putting with that jarring scream. But again, that might be because I know the short story. So I'm going to try to erase all of that from my mind and say, as a short film, I actually really enjoyed this. I thought it was done very well. And I just wish I had a little bit more of that setup. So I'm going to give The Man Who Loved Flowers 4 out of 5 buckets of pig's blood. Now, as an adaptation, I think it was a little lost on tone. I think it would have been really easy to set this in 1963 or to fully update it. Having the old-timey music and then even the more contemporary music was still 80s, I think, 70s or 80s. Then I didn't know when I was. I don't mind that they switched it from New York City to wherever these filmmakers lived. It's low-budget short filmmaking. I think they had great production quality. The shots looked great. I love what they did with the old couple at the end and the thing with the wedding ring. It honored the short story very much. It's just that bit of tone, that little bit of tone that was off. That thing with the crow that made us go, when really in the short story, it's just this thing that flies by, this mention of Vietnam, this mention of a hammer killer, and we're right back to this man in love buying his flowers. And that gives us the setup for the end that we don't get here. So I'm going to have to go as an adaptation of the short story, The Man Who Loved Flowers. I will give the 2011 short film of the same name 3 buckets of pig's blood. Thank you guys so much for joining me on this movie vlog for The Man Who Loved Flowers, or if you're watching over on Patreon, the full watch-along with commentary. If you want to follow me on social media or get those watch-alongs, support the channel via Patreon, all of those links are down below. Next week, we're getting the final 2 stories in the night shift reading vlog that I filmed when I still had hair. So if you're new to the channel, do not be surprised that hair will be on me in next week's video, and then not for the video the following week, which I just finished filming with Sebastian LaBelle, actor from Chapelwaite, who, if you have been following the channel since the Chapelwaite reactions 7 or 8 months ago when this fucking night shift movie vlog thing started, because there are so many adaptations of 20 stories, I think only 2 or 3 are not adapted. Chapelwaite is based on the short story Jerusalem's Lot, which is the first story in Night Shift. And Sebastian LaBelle, the actor from that show, is back with me in 2 weeks to do the watch-along and the movie vlog for One for the Road, which is a sequel to the novel Salem's Lot, the way that Jerusalem's Lot was a prequel that got turned into the show Chapelwaite that he is in. Did you follow all that? Thanks for joining me, guys. Click the links below. If you want to watch the whole film, that link's down there as well. I will see you next time.